Four blue-skinned children huddle in a rust-stained corridor, their birthmarks glowing under emergency lights. "Don't leave us, human!" The eldest begs a battle-scarred mercenary trying to walk away. Behind them, the shadows shift with the click of bounty hunter rifles. What makes these children worth millions in credits? And why would a man who swore off violence risk everything for them? Emergency lights flickered along the corroded metal walls, their orange glow stretching shadows like grasping fingers across the maintenance corridor. The four children pressed themselves flat against a rust-streaked bulkhead, their blue skin standing out sharply against the station's industrial gray. Each breath tasted of recycled air and ozone. Their faintly glowing birthmarks pulsed in the dimness, marking them as targets in the human-dominated station. Boots echoed from a connecting passage. Two bounty hunters moved with practiced coordination, weapon-mounted lights sweeping across pipe clusters and maintenance hatches. Their tactical gear bore the scuffs of professional use, and their movements spoke of systematic search patterns. The hunters paused 15 meters away, consulting wrist-mounted scanners. The children didn't breathe. Carrara, the eldest at 14, calculated probabilities with a precision that belied her years. Speaking to the solitary mercenary approaching from the opposite direction meant potential salvation. Remaining silent meant certain capture. Her royal training provided the framework: assess threat levels, evaluate assets, calculate risk percentages. But her racing heart remembered she was just a child hiding in the dark. Station. Security logs would show 3 hunter teams actively, scanning Sector 7G patrol. Density had increased 42% in the last standard hour. The children's survival now depended on fractions of percentages, on the precise timing of patrol rotations and the blind spots in sensor coverage. The youngest, Emma, trembled against her sister's side. Jake positioned himself as a human shield, his body angled to protect the others. Sam's fingers moved in subtle gestures, coordinating their silent breathing patterns. They were royalty trained for throne rooms and diplomacy, not for hiding in maintenance ducts while hunters stalked them. Each passing second increased detection risk by 3.7%. Carrara tracked the mercenary's approach 30 paces away, 2015. His boots rang against the grated flooring. She saw the weapons at his hips, the tactical wear beneath his civilian jacket, the wary way he scanned his surroundings without appearing to do so. The hunter's scanner emitted a sharp ping from the adjacent corridor. They turned toward the sound. Carrara made the decision in that exact moment, her whisper cutting through the hum of machinery. "Help us." The words hung between them, simple and devastating. The mercenary stopped walking. His eyes found them in the shadows, taking in their blue skin, their glowing marks, their desperate posture. He didn't speak. He didn't move. The hunter's footsteps grew louder as they approached the junction. Donald Rhee moved through the station's lower levels like a man who knew how to become part of the scenery. His boots hit the grated floor with a rhythm that matched the machinery's hum, his posture suggesting someone with places to go, but no particular hurry to get there. He wore the practical clothing of a freelance worker, but the set of his shoulders and the way his eyes continuously scanned without appearing to do so marked him as something else entirely. The children's whispered plea reached him just as he registered their presence. 4 blue-skinned figures pressed against the bulkhead, their faces pale with fear but their bodies holding a stillness that didn't match their apparent desperation. His instinct said, keep walking. This wasn't his problem, and trouble on Orbital 9 had a way of multiplying faster than credits in a rich man's account. But then he saw the boy positioning himself. Jake had shifted into a defensive stance that professional soldiers spent months perfecting. Weight balanced, body angled to protect the others, eyes tracking the potential threats in both directions. That wasn't refugee behavior. That was trained protection posture. Their eyes held him. Despite the obvious fear tightening their features, their gazes carried a determination that contradicted everything about their situation. The eldest girl's expression showed calculation, not panic. The smaller ones followed her lead with disciplined silence, their communication consisting of subtle hand signals and barely perceptible nods. Donald's mercenary training had emphasized reading body language in high-stakes environments. He'd been taught to spot the slight tremble of a bomb-wearer's hands, the forced calm of an assassin, the deceptive relaxation of a professional negotiator. These children displayed the controlled tension of people who understood exactly how much danger they were in and had decided to face it with clear-eyed resolve. Their whispered coordination revealed patterns he'd seen before. The quick, efficient exchange of information, the way they divided attention between approaching threats, the economy of movement, it all spoke of military-level discipline. They weren't just scared children. They were a unit. Memories surfaced unbidden. A resistance cell on Viridian Prime, holding a contested bridge against corporate enforcers with that same valiant stubbornness. Freedom fighters on Kessel Station, making their last stand in a burning marketplace rather than surrender their wounded. There was a particular quality to people fighting for something beyond their own survival. A clarity of purpose that showed in how they held themselves, how they moved, how they met your eyes. He recognized it now in these children. That royal heritage wasn't just about blue skin and glowing marks. It was in the way they carried themselves like they still owned the galaxy, despite having nothing but the clothes on their backs. It was in the unspoken understanding that some things were worth dying for. The realization settled in his gut like a heavy stone. He'd come to Orbital 9 to escape exactly this kind of complication. The moral choices, the noble causes, the violence that always followed principle like a shadow. For 2 years, he'd stayed anonymous, taken simple jobs, avoided anything that smelled of greater meaning or higher stakes. Now 4 children with eyes too old for their faces were pulling him back toward everything he'd left behind. The hunter's footsteps grew closer. Their scanner pinged again, louder this time. Donald made no conscious decision. His hand simply moved to the weapon at his hip, his body turning to face the approaching threat. The old patterns reasserted themselves like muscle memory, and he knew with cold certainty that his quiet life on Orbital 9 was over. Floravars wiped engine grease from her hands with a stained rag, the smell of lubricant and ozone filling her cramped repair bay on Level 5. Her eyes tracked movement beyond the open hatch, a mercenary she vaguely recognized moving with 4 children in tow. Then she saw the patterns on their skin. The birthmarks glowed with a faint luminescence she hadn't seen in years. Precise constellations of light against blue skin that mapped a lineage she thought vanished from the galaxy. Her hands stilled. The specific arrangement of markings matched the royal sigils she'd once serviced on Azuran fleet vessels. Her fingers remembered tracing those same patterns on navigation consoles and engine housings, polishing the insignias of a dynasty that had ruled with something resembling justice. The children carried the primary and secondary markings of direct heirs, the eldest showing the telltale configuration that indicated firstborn status. Station debt records flashed through her mind, the crushing weight of repair bay licensing fees, equipment leases, and corporate tariffs that kept her anchored to Orbital 9. The bounty on these children would clear every credit of that debt 10 times over. It would also mean certain death for them, and likely for her too if the wrong people learned she'd recognize them. Queen Lydia's face surfaced in her memory, the calm dignity, the unexpected kindness she'd shown a lowly technician, the way she'd personally ensured her crew received proper medical care after the battle at Cygnus Ridge. Then the coup footage, grainy security images of coordinated attacks, the Queen's final transmission warning about trusted allies turning traitor. Lydia had believed in something beyond profit and power, and they'd murdered her for it. These children carried their mother's features in the set of their jaws, the directness of their gaze. They moved with a purpose that contradicted their refugee appearance. Helping them would mean either dying on this station or finally escaping its corporate chains. The bounty hunters already swarmed through the lower levels. She'd overheard their communications bleeding through the station's open channels. Her repair bay's security system showed 3 hunter teams within 200 meters. The children and the mercenary were heading toward a known surveillance blind spot near maintenance shaft 7B. They had maybe 90 seconds before the next patrol. Sweep. Flora's hands remembered the weight of the oath she'd sworn while servicing the royal fleet. The debt counter on her wall terminal blinked red, another payment overdue, another penalty accruing. She thought about the freedom those bounty credits could buy, then remembered Lydia's voice on the comms during the Kessel evacuation, calmly directing rescue operations while her own ship took enemy fire. She stepped from her bay into the corridor. The mercenary's hand went to his weapon. The children froze, their eyes wide. Flora kept her voice low, cutting through the station's constant hum. The markings on your left shoulders, the triple constellation pattern. You're Lydia's children. The words hung between them, both accusation and opportunity. The mercenary's fingers tightened on his weapon. The eldest girl met Flora's gaze without flinching. No denial, no pretense, just the quiet acknowledgement of a truth that could get them all killed. 2 years hadn't dulled the memory, only filed its edges sharper. Flora remembered the coup like a fresh repair job gone wrong. The smell of ionized air, the way station comms had crackled with emergency alerts, the security footage showing coordinated attacks from within the palace itself. Queen Lydia's reign had been different. Not perfect, but principled. She'd enacted trade reforms that actually reached frontier worlds, not just corporate centers. Her justice ministers prosecuted corrupt officials regardless of their connections. The fleet maintained order without crushing local autonomy. The current regime offered something else entirely. Corporate control extended into every airlock and maintenance conduit. Security patrols served shareholder interests instead of public safety. Debt collectors had more authority than judges. What passed for law now protected profit margins, not people. Flora's own repair bay operated under licensing, agreements that bled her dry while providing zero protection against hunter violence. Lydia's final transmission played in her memory, that calm voice warning about trusted allies turning traitor even as assault teams breached her quarters. The message had contained specific names, security codes, deployment patterns, evidence that the coup had been planned by people the Queen ate with, laughed with, governed with. The new regime called it fabricated evidence, but Flora had serviced those ships, seen those security patterns firsthand. These children standing before her now carried their mother's legacy in their posture, their expressions, their quiet determination. They had Lydia's direct gaze, her way of listening with full attention, her habit of measuring words before speaking. Imperial propaganda screens showed their faces daily. Dangerous fugitives, threats to stability, wanted dead or alive. The broadcasts never mentioned they were children, never showed how the youngest still held her sister's hand when frightened. Flora's service records listed her as loyalist personnel. That designation meant extra scrutiny, higher fees, mandatory compliance checks. It also meant she remembered how things were supposed to work, how a leader's first duty was to their people, not their portfolio. How justice meant more than efficient enforcement. The bounty on these children would solve all her financial problems. It would also mean delivering Lydia's legacy to the people who murdered her. The debt counter on her wall kept ticking upward, but some debts couldn't be measured in credits. She looked at Carrara's steady gaze, saw the Queen's intelligence reflected there, saw Jake's protective stance, Sam's analytical eyes, Emma's quiet observation. They weren't just children. They were living proof that another way existed, that governance could be about service rather than control. Protecting them became more than a risk calculation. It became the only way to honor what Lydia had tried to build, the only chance to preserve the memory of a system that didn't treat people as disposable assets. Flora's hands, still stained with engine grease, clenched at her sides. The hunter's footsteps echoed through the corridor, growing closer. She made her choice without another moment's hesitation, gesturing toward her repair bay's hidden maintenance hatch. Donald did the math in his head. He always did the math first. Survival odds for 4 royal children on a hunter-infested station, maybe 3% if they moved fast. His own survival if he walked away, 98%. The bounty on those small shoulders would set a man up for life, enough credits to buy a ship and disappear forever. Every scar on his body ached with the memory of what happened when you got involved with royalty. His mercenary training provided cold statistics. Extraction missions with higher probabilities had ended in body bags. Station surveillance covered 90% of interior spaces, with hunter networks monitoring the blind spots. They shared target locations in real time, their comms buzzing with coordinates and credit offers. The children's birthmarks glowed like beacons under stress, making hiding nearly impossible. The numbers said impossible. The situation screamed suicide. His instincts, honed across 12 systems and twice as many corporate wars, told him to keep walking. Royalty meant complications. Royalty meant politics. Royalty meant getting caught between factions that would crush you without noticing. But then he looked at them. Really looked. Carrara's eyes held the same calculating focus he'd seen in veteran tactical officers. Jake positioned himself like a guardsman who'd trained since childhood. Sam's fingers moved in subtle patterns, analyzing their surroundings. Emma, the smallest, watched the shadows with a stillness most adults couldn't manage under fire. Their calm contradicted everything about their situation. They should have been crying, panicking, making mistakes. Instead, they moved with a quiet coordination that spoke of intensive training. They assessed threats, communicated silently, maintained discipline. Their value wasn't just in their bloodline. It was in what that bloodline had forged them into. He remembered the bounty notices scrolling across station screens. Astronomical sums for each heir, dead or alive. The amounts kept increasing as their evasion continued. Hunters would be saturating the sector within minutes, sweeping every corridor, checking every hatch. The station administration would be coordinating with them, offering bonuses for successful captures. Long-term hiding was impossible. The surveillance system's facial recognition would already be flagging their images. Thermal sensors would detect body heat signatures in maintenance shafts. Audio pickups would catch their breathing. Orbital 9 was designed to prevent exactly what they were trying to do, yet they stood there waiting for his decision. Not pleading, not begging, just watching him with those two old eyes, their postures straight despite the fear tightening their shoulders. They carried themselves like they still expected to be obeyed, like command was their birthright rather than a distant memory. That royal demeanor finally decided him. It wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. The same certainty that made good officers stand firm when everything was falling apart. The same quality that made soldiers follow leaders into impossible situations. His hand came away from his weapon. He nodded once, a short downward tilt of his chin that meant agreement, commitment, temporary alliance. The children didn't relax. They simply adjusted their positions, incorporating him into their defensive formation. Carrara met his eyes and gave a slight nod of acknowledgement. He became their protector in that moment. Not because the math made sense, not because he believed in their cause, but because something in their stillness, their quiet dignity, reminded him of what he'd once fought for before he started fighting only for credits. The hunter's footsteps echoed from the next corridor over. They were out of time. Flora pulled the children deeper into her repair bay, the work lights casting harsh illumination across their blue skin. She examined the markings with a technician's eye, her fingers hovering just above the patterns without touching. The birthmarks glowed with faint bioluminescence, intricate constellations mapping across their shoulders and arms. They weren't random. They were precise biological signatures. Each pattern contained encrypted genealogical data, she explained quietly. The markings identified royal lineage like a living barcode, storing generations of ancestry in their light patterns. Imperial databases automatically flagged these specific configurations. Security scanners throughout the station were programmed to detect them, with automated alerts going directly to hunter networks. The children carried their own wanted posters written in light on their skin. The variations told their story. Carrara's primary markings showed the firstborn configuration, with secondary patterns indicating her tactical training status. Jake's displayed the protector sigils, Sam's the analyst coding, Emma's the diplomatic markers. Their royal education had physically manifested in these biological signatures, each child's purpose written in light for anyone who knew how to read it. Station scanning technology made hiding nearly impossible. Thermal imagers could detect the unique energy signatures. Motion sensors calibrated to recognize the specific luminescence patterns. Audio pickups sensitive to the faint hum the markings emitted under stress. Their value as targets increased with every security system they passed near. The glow intensified as Flora spoke, the patterns brightening with their rising anxiety. That was the cruelest part. The more frightened they became, the more they shone. Fear became a beacon that called their hunters to them. Their biological response worked against their survival at every turn. Donald watched from the entrance, his hand resting on his weapon. He understood now why the bounty kept increasing. These weren't just children. They were walking political statements, living proof that the old dynasty hadn't been wiped out, that the current regime's claims of legitimacy were built on murdered royalty. Their value wasn't just in the credits on their heads. It was in what they represented, an alternative to corporate control, a reminder that power could be exercised with principle rather than profit motive. The birthmarks proved their claim beyond any document or witness. Biology doesn't lie. Politics can be rewritten, but genetics preserve truth. The markings also explained why ordinary disguises wouldn't work. Dyes couldn't conceal the luminescence. Clothing that covered the patterns would still allow energy signatures to bleed through. Their very bodies worked against their survival, designed for royal ceremony rather than hiding. Flora finished her examination, her expression grim. The children's worth wasn't measured in credits alone. They represented both a threat to the current power structure and the key to unlocking their mother's legacy. Their biological reality made them prisoners of their own ancestry, but that same ancestry might be their only chance at survival. The work lights hummed overhead. Outside the bay, bootsteps echoed through the corridor. Hunter patrols were sweeping the level methodically. Each passing moment brought the scanners closer to detecting the royal signatures glowing right here in the repair bay. Orbital 9 functioned as a corporate hunting preserve wrapped in station architecture. Every corridor served dual purposes: maintenance access and tactical funnel. Emergency exits doubled as capture points. Service corridors provided perfect ambush lanes. The station's design favored hunters over prey at every turn. Bounty hunters operated with legal immunity stamped by corporate authority. They could detain, search, even use lethal force without facing station justice. Their licenses granted them access to security feeds, patrol schedules, and restricted areas. The station administration treated them as preferred customers rather than potential threats. Security patrols received bonus incentives for reporting high-value targets. Their standard compensation tripled for confirmed sightings of wanted individuals. This created a system where protectors became additional hunters, their loyalty measured in credit bonuses rather than public safety. The children faced not only professional bounty hunters, but also station security looking to supplement their income. Docking fees operated on variable pricing that punished the hunted. Ships carrying wanted individuals paid premium rates that increased with bounty values. This financial pressure made sanctuary expensive and temporary. Captains willing to transport fugitives faced economic penalties designed to discourage assistance. The station's layout created natural choke points. Narrow maintenance corridors forced movement into predictable patterns. Limited access points to each level created bottlenecks where hunters could set up systematic checks. Ventilation shafts were either too small for adult passage or monitored with motion sensors. The environment itself worked against anyone trying to avoid detection. Corporate conflicts had eliminated civilian protection protocols. Station governance prioritized shareholder interests over resident safety. Emergency response services focused on property damage rather than personal safety. The station's charter explicitly limited liability for incidents involving licensed bounty operations. People understood that getting caught in hunter crossfire meant dealing with the consequences alone. Information brokers operated openly in designated sectors. They sold real-time tracking data, security feed access, and patrol schedules to the highest bidders. Hunter networks shared target information through encrypted channels, creating an economy of pursuit where every sighting had a price tag. The children's movements became commodities traded across communication networks. The royal training that seemed excessive in palace settings became essential survival currency here. Karara's tactical education helped her identify ambush points before they materialized. Jake's defensive training allowed him to position the group where they had multiple exit options. Sam's analytical skills processed environmental data faster than most adults could manage. Emma's diplomatic calm kept panic from overwhelming their decision-making. Their value made them prizes in a system designed to deliver them to the highest bidder. Every security camera, every patrolling guard, every bounty hunter represented another potential capture point. The station's infrastructure actively worked against them while facilitating their pursuit. They survived through adaptability honed by royal education. Their training had emphasized crisis management over ceremony, tactical thinking over tradition. What seemed like extravagant preparation for leadership became practical survival skills when the environment itself became hostile. Their value as targets forced them to become more resourceful than their hunters anticipated. The corporate game treated them as assets to be collected. Their biological signatures made hiding nearly impossible. Their political significance made them valuable, and their youth made them vulnerable. Yet they moved through the hunting grounds with a discipline that contradicted their apparent disadvantages. The station was designed to facilitate their capture, but they used its flaws against their pursuers. Karara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the repair bay's mechanical hum. She offered safe passage off the station in exchange for access to their mother's treasury. The words landed with the weight of a cargo hauler hitting deck plating. She spoke with a formal precision that belied her age. laying out terms like a seasoned negotiator rather than a frightened child. The treasury's location remained one of the galaxy's best-kept secrets. Its coordinates were protected by multiple layers of encryption, biological verification, and royal protocols. The contents could fund an entire rebellion against the current regime. Weapons, ships, intelligence networks, everything needed to challenge corporate control. Outer Rim territories offered relative safety, where imperial influence weakened and bounty hunters operated with less authority. Their royal education included detailed knowledge of treasury access procedures. Carrara described authentication protocols that required all 4 heirs present, each providing unique biological and knowledge-based verification. The system had fail-safes against coercion and duplication attempts. It could not be accessed by force or through intermediaries. Donald calculated the risks. Protecting royalty through hunter-infested space meant constant engagement with superior forces. The treasury might be a myth, its contents long since looted or seized. Even if real, reaching it would require traversing contested space where their wanted status would trigger alerts at every jump point. The potential reward meant nothing if they died trying to reach it. Flora weighed her options. Helping them meant abandoning her repair business, her only source of income and stability. The treasury's existence contradicted imperial claims that Lydia's assets had been lawfully seized during the transition of power. If real, it represented both unimaginable wealth and undeniable proof of regime corruption. The children's survival depended on this dangerous exchange. They had no other bargaining chips, no alternative offers to make. Their value as captives meant certain death, while their value as allies offered a slim chance at freedom. The proposal forced both adults to confront their deepest loyalties and most practical fears. Hunter patrols passed near the repair bay, their bootsteps echoing through the corridor grates. Each set of footsteps represented the immediate alternative to trusting strangers. Capture meant interrogation, exploitation, and eventual execution. The treasury offer, however dangerous, at least contained the possibility of a future. Carrara's eyes held no deception. She stated the terms without embellishment or desperation. The other children stood silently behind her, their postures straight, their faces composed. They understood exactly what they were offering and what they risked in offering it. Their royal training showed in their calm presentation of what amounted to a suicide mission, with a prize at the end. Donald's mercenary experience recognized the tactical reality. They needed transport, weapons, and expertise he could provide. Flora's technical knowledge and station access completed the equation. The children brought the one thing nobody else could offer: access to resources that could change the balance of power across multiple systems. The proposal hung between them, a dangerous bargain that could mean freedom or death for everyone involved. Outside, the hunter's scanner pinged again, closer this time. The decision couldn't wait. They either accepted the risk together or faced the consequences separately. Flora's knuckles whitened around the hydrospanner's familiar grip. The weight felt good in her hand, solid, purposeful, capable of fixing engines or cracking skulls. Lydia's death had been both personal and political. The Queen had personally approved her transfer to flagship maintenance, recognizing talent regardless of background. That promotion meant everything. Then the coup erased it all: her position, her pension, her place in something larger than herself. Helping these children could settle accounts in both directions. The repair shop's debt counter glowed red on the wall, a constant reminder of corporate control. Licensing fees, equipment leases, security tariffs, the numbers climbed higher every month. The bounty would clear it instantly, but it would also mean handing Lydia's children to their mother's murderers. Some debts couldn't be paid with credits. Her former life in the Royal Fleet felt like someone else's story now. She'd serviced engines on vessels that maintained peace across sectors. Now she fixed haulers for merchants who gouged frontier settlements. The coup didn't just change governments, it degraded everything it touched. Quality became profit margin. Service became exploitation. Honor became inconvenience. Seeing the children ignited something cold and sharp in her chest. Their eyes held Lydia's directness, their postures echoed her calm authority. The anger she'd suppressed for 2 years surfaced like a reactor criticality. It wasn't just rage at what was taken from her. It was fury at what had been done to them, hunting children like animals for the crime of being born to a decent ruler. Successful escape meant more than survival. It meant freedom from Orbital 9's economic traps, from the corporate control that measured human worth in credit increments. It meant spitting in the eye of the system that crushed Lydia and everything she represented. Failure meant capture, interrogation, execution. The hunters wouldn't be gentle with a mechanic who aided royal fugitives. The risks stacked up like poorly balanced cargo. Every security camera, every patrol, every bounty hunter represented potential disaster. The station's design favored capture over escape. Their biological signatures made hiding nearly impossible. The plan required perfect timing and multiple points of failure. But Flora remembered Lydia's face during the Cygnus Ridge evacuation, calmly directing rescue operations while under fire herself. The Queen hadn't prioritized her own safety. She'd made choices based on what was right, not what was safe. That memory tipped the scales. Vengeance and escape became intertwined. Settling the debt to Lydia's memory meant ensuring her children survived. Escaping Orbital 9's traps meant striking back at the system that enabled her murder. The practical need for freedom merged with the emotional need for justice. She made the commitment without speaking. Her grip on the hydrospanner relaxed into its familiar working hold. The tool became an extension of her will rather than a weapon. Her eyes met Donald's across the repair bay, then Carrara's. No discussion needed. Some choices communicated themselves through posture, through the set of shoulders, through the readiness in a mechanic's grease-stained hands. The hunter patrol passed the bay entrance, their boots ringing against metal grating. Flora didn't flinch. She simply adjusted her grip on the hydrospanner and moved toward the power coupling access panel. Her decision was made. The debts would be settled her way. Donald carried his history and the scars that mapped across his knuckles and the old fracture lines along his ribs. Each mark told a story he'd worked hard to forget. The close-quarter engagement on Torvin Station, the extraction gone wrong near the Cygnus Drift, the corporate security forces that fought with a brutality no military would sanction. That life had required a specific kind of calculus, where survival meant making choices that haunted you later. His experience made him ideally suited for protecting the children. He could read patrol patterns, anticipate ambush points, and neutralize threats with efficient violence. The skills came back too easily. The way his hand found the right grip on his weapon, the way his eyes tracked multiple threats simultaneously, the way his body moved to cover angles without conscious thought. Muscle memory remembered what his mind wanted to forget. Every action now risked pulling him back into that existence. The station had offered anonymity through sheer numbers. Just another freelance worker among thousands. Nobody asking about past affiliations or old missions. Protecting royalty meant stepping into the spotlight again. It meant becoming a person of interest to the very networks he'd escaped. The corporate wars left damage that didn't show on scans. Waking with his hand already reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Calculating exit strategies in crowded rooms. The particular tension in his shoulders when someone walked too close behind him. He'd come to Orbital 9 to outrun those reflexes, to become someone who didn't automatically assess every space for defensive advantages. His skill set contradicted his current purpose. Mercenaries didn't protect royalty. They overthrew them, captured them, sometimes eliminated them for the right price. His entire professional background argued against this choice. The practical survival instinct screamed at him to take the bounty money and disappear. Yet their vulnerability triggered something deeper than professional calculation. Seeing Jake position his small body as a shield for his sisters, watching Carrara make tactical decisions with a commander's calm despite her trembling hands. The way they moved as a unit, protecting each other with a coordination that spoke of love as much as training. He couldn't abandon them. The realization settled with cold certainty. His moral code, buried under years of practical compromises, reasserted itself. Some lines couldn't be crossed again. Some choices defined you regardless of the cost. The personal price would be high. The hunter networks would flag his identity. Old enemies might resurface. The quiet life he'd built would evaporate. But looking at the children's determined faces, their quiet trust in this stranger who'd decided to help them, he knew the cost of walking away would be higher still. His hand rested on his weapon, not with the tense readiness of a mercenary expecting combat, but with the settled certainty of someone who'd made a choice. The scars on his knuckles seemed less like reminders of past violence and more like proof he'd survived things worth surviving for. The children watched him, their royal training allowing them to read his decision in the set of his shoulders, the relaxation of his stance. They didn't thank him. They simply adjusted their formation to include him, their silent acceptance more meaningful than any words. Flora's technical knowledge of Orbital 9's infrastructure shaped their escape strategy with cold practicality. She identified the Shadow Star, a poorly maintained cargo hauler docked in Bay 12, as their best chance. The ship's reputation for mechanical issues and lax security made it vulnerable. Its captain, Brix, operated with minimal crew and maximum discretion, often carrying illicit cargo for corporate clients who asked no questions. The vessel's aging systems matched Flora's expertise perfectly. The plan balanced on a razor's edge of timing and coordination. Multiple failure points threatened collapse at any moment. Docking Bay 12 offered strategic advantages: minimal security patrols, constant cargo traffic creating visual cover, and outdated surveillance systems with known blind spots. The chaotic flow of loading equipment and crew movements provided temporary anonymity if they moved with purpose. The station's aging power grid became their primary tool. Flora knew exactly which junction boxes to sabotage for maximum effect. A targeted blackout would disrupt security systems, override docking protocols, and create the confusion needed for boarding. The cascading failure would trigger emergency lighting and redirect patrols toward the power disruption, rather than the escape attempt. Maintenance. Coveralls stolen from unlocked lockers provided visual camouflage. The stained uniforms matched hundreds of other workers moving through the bay areas. Their tools and equipment carts blended into the background noise of station operations. The children's smaller sizes could be explained as apprentices or family members, a common sight in the less regulated docking zones. Captain Brix's reputation worked in their favor. His preference for minimal crew meant fewer people to overcome during boarding. His history of transporting questionable cargo suggested he wouldn't immediately alert station security. The ship's modifications for smuggling included hidden compartments and bypassed security seals that Flora could exploit. The children's royal training included ship systems operation and basic piloting. Carrara could manage navigation protocols while Jake understood defensive systems. Sam's analytical skills could monitor sensor readings for pursuit, and Emma's calm under pressure would help maintain systems monitoring during the escape. Their education had prepared them for command situations, not just ceremonial functions. A coordinated distraction would create their window. Flora would trigger the power disruption at precisely 19 hours, when shift changes created maximum confusion in the security office. Donald would provide armed protection during the transit to Bay 12, neutralizing any threats with minimal noise. The children would move as a unit, using cargo containers and equipment for cover until reaching the Shadow Star's docking umbilical. Their survival depended on flawless execution under extreme pressure. Each second counted once the blackout began. Security would restore backup systems within minutes. Hunter teams would converge on the bay area once they recognized the pattern. The ship's systems would need immediate activation despite possible maintenance issues. The plan left no room for error. A single misstep, a delayed response, an unexpected patrol. Any deviation meant capture or death. They moved toward Bay 12 with the quiet determination of people who understood the stakes. Maintenance coveralls hid their royal markings but couldn't conceal the purpose in their movements. The Shadow Star waited ahead, its rust-streaked hull representing either freedom or a metal coffin. The children shed their refugee posture like discarded clothing. Their royal education, once theoretical preparation for future leadership, became immediate survival currency. Classroom scenarios about crisis management transformed into concrete actions with life-or-death consequences. The transition happened without discussion. They simply began operating according to their training. Jake positioned himself with the precise footwork of palace guard drills. His body created cover for the others, his eyes scanning for threats in specific patterns taught by veteran protectors. He identified choke points and defensive positions instinctively, his movements economical and purposeful. When Donald moved to flank their position, Jake adjusted without being told, maintaining optimal coverage. His youth contradicted his tactical competence. Sam's intelligence analysis skills found practical application in the station's chaos. His eyes tracked patrol patterns, calculating intervals between sweeps and identifying surveillance blind spots. He noted which security cameras pivoted on fixed cycles versus random patterns. His fingers flickered in subtle signals to the others. 3 patrols converging, 2 minutes until next sweep. Maintenance drone approaching from starboard. The information flowed continuously, his mind processing data streams like the tactical computers he'd studied. Emma's diplomatic training manifested in her control of voice and expression. When a curious maintenance worker approached, she smiled with exactly the right blend of innocence and authority. "Official inspection," she stated, her tone leaving no room for questions. The worker retreated without suspicion. She modulated her breathing to project calm during tense moments, her presence having a steadying effect on the adults as well as her siblings. Her deception techniques were polished enough to bypass casual scrutiny. Carrara's leadership training guided their movements through the station's lower levels. She made decisions with a commander's certainty, weighing risks and assigning roles without hesitation. Her voice remained low but carried absolute authority. Jake cover left, Sam monitor rear, Emma watch for drones. The commands came rapidly but clearly, each based on situational assessment rather than panic. She integrated Donald and Flora into their operational structure seamlessly, treating them as resources rather than rescuers. Their age concealed extensive education in statecraft and military strategy. They understood organizational structures, chain of command principles, and tactical doctrine that most soldiers learned through experience. The theoretical knowledge gained from palace tutors and military advisors became immediately practical. They could anticipate hunter behavior based on standard bounty hunter protocols, predict security responses using corporate enforcement models, and calculate escape probabilities with statistical precision. The transformation from frightened children to tactical operators occurred seamlessly. Their royal upbringing had prepared them for exactly this kind of pressure, just in different environments. Throne room diplomacy became corridor deception. Military strategy sessions became actual combat preparation. Crisis management simulations became real survival calculations. They adapted their training to the circumstances with a flexibility that surprised even their adult protectors. Their value extended far beyond their royal bloodline. They brought tangible skills to their own rescue: analytical capabilities, tactical knowledge, leadership qualities, and deception techniques that complemented the adult's experience. The combination created an operational unit stronger than the sum of its parts. Children who should have been liabilities became assets. Royalty, who should have been burdens, became competent partners in their own survival. They moved through the station's dangers with a coordination that spoke of shared purpose and mutual trust. The theoretical education their mother had insisted upon became their greatest survival tool. Classroom knowledge met real-world application in the rusting corridors of Orbital 9, and the children proved equal to the challenge. Flora's hydrospanner bit into the main power coupling with surgical precision. 3 quick cuts, each placed exactly where the schematics showed weakness. The metal groaned, then sparked. A deep hum shuddered through the station's infrastructure as the system recognized the damage. Emergency protocols activated instantly, but too late. The cascading failure swept through Level 7, plunging corridors into the red-tinged gloom of backup lighting. Security systems switched to secondary power within 45 seconds. Battery arrays engaged with audible clicks throughout the sector. Camera feeds flickered, rebooted, then resumed operation with reduced resolution. Motion sensors recalibrated to the lower light conditions. The automated alert system pinged Security Command with a Priority 1 infrastructure failure report. Hunter patrols immediately redirected toward the disturbance. Their comms crackled with coordinated movement orders. Boots echoed through adjacent corridors as teams converged on the power disruption. Scanners adjusted to detect thermal signatures in the emergency lighting's limited spectrum. The station's security protocols prioritized restoring critical systems, allocating resources to life support and primary surveillance. This created temporary gaps in peripheral coverage. The children moved through the darkened corridors without speaking. Their footsteps made no sound on the grated flooring. They used the irregular lighting to their advantage, flowing from shadow to shadow with practiced silence. Jake led the way, his body angled to maximize cover. Sam monitored rear approaches, his hand signals indicating clear paths. Emma maintained the center position, her breathing controlled. Carrara coordinated their movement with subtle gestures. Donald provided armed protection during the vulnerable transit. His weapon remained undrawn but accessible. His eyes tracked the shifting patterns of emergency lights and security patrol movements. He positioned himself between the children and potential threat vectors, his body acting as a mobile barrier. When a hunter team approached an intersecting corridor, he gestured the children into a maintenance alcove. They pressed against cold metal until the boots passed. Station security protocols created their opportunity. The centralized response system diverted patrols to protect critical infrastructure first. This left secondary corridors temporarily unmonitored. The power disruption also triggered automatic door seals in damaged sections, creating additional obstacles for pursuing teams. The confusion provided a narrow window measured in minutes, not hours. They reached Bay 12 as systems began reactivating. Primary lighting flickered overhead, casting staggered illumination across the docking area. The Shadow Star sat where Flora promised. Its ramp still extended for loading. Behind them, security teams reported power restoration in Sector 7. Hunter comms indicated suspicion about the timing of the blackout. Their timing demonstrated military-level coordination. They'd moved through the chaos with precision that belied their age and circumstances. The blackout had lasted exactly long enough to cover their transit, not long enough to trigger station-wide lockdown protocols. They'd used the emergency response patterns against their pursuers, turning security procedures into vulnerabilities. The bay's emergency lights still glowed red as they approached the ship. Normal illumination continued restoring itself in waves across the facility. Hunters would be reorganizing their search patterns now, recalibrating scanners to the changing light conditions. The Shadow Star's engines remained cold and silent, but its boarding ramp offered sanctuary. They had seconds before someone noticed their presence in the restricted docking area. The Shadow Star's boarding ramp exhaled the stale air of a vessel that had seen more smuggling runs than legitimate hauls. Its minimal crew made it vulnerable. Just 3 visible personnel moving cargo with the sluggish efficiency of men who expected no trouble. The ship's poor maintenance showed in the worn deck plating and mismatched replacement parts. This wasn't a professional operation. It was a barely functional criminal enterprise masquerading as transport. Captain Brick stood near the cargo manifest terminal, his hand resting on a worn pistol grip. His reputation for violence preceded him, quick to anger, faster to shoot. Security feeds showed prior incidents where he'd spaced crew members for minor offenses. His eyes tracked the loading process with paranoid intensity, his body language suggesting someone who expected betrayal at any moment. The children moved without hesitation. Jake and Sam unspooled conductive maintenance cables from a wall reel, their hands working with practiced efficiency. They looped the cables around unsuspecting crew members, using the element of surprise to create instant restraints. The material bit into wrists and ankles before the men could react. Their royal training included restraint techniques normally used for ceremonial guards, now applied with practical urgency. Donald's combat experience neutralized the armed resistance. He moved with economical violence, disabling the first guard with a pressure point strike to the neck, disarming the second with a wrist lock that ended with the man's own weapon pressed against his temple. When Bricks drew his pistol, Donald's boot connected with his shooting hand, sending the weapon skittering across the deck plating. The entire engagement lasted 7 seconds. Flora went immediately to the engineering console, her fingers flying across diagnostic screens. She bypassed safety protocols with quick code injections, her knowledge of older ship systems proving invaluable. The engines remained cold, but life support showed green across all sectors. Navigation systems responded to her commands despite the outdated interface. Her assessment confirmed the ship could fly, though not gracefully. Illegal cargo compartments became apparent as they secured the ship. Hidden panels lined the cargo hold, their seals indicating recent use. The modification suggested Bricks carried contraband for clients who valued discretion over safety. The ship's registry showed multiple ownership changes and flagged inspections, painting a picture of a vessel that moved through the galaxy's gray markets. Further examination revealed defensive modifications from previous hijack attempts, reinforced bulkheads around the bridge, emergency purge systems for the cargo hold, and weapon emplacements that had been removed but left mounting points behind. This ship had seen violence before and been modified to survive it. The pattern suggested professional work done on the fringe, where regulations didn't reach. They achieved control through coordinated action. The children secured the restrained crew in a storage locker, while Donald maintained watch at the boarding ramp. Flora brought primary systems online with a sequence of manual overrides. The ship hummed to life around them, its systems responding with the reluctant obedience of poorly maintained equipment. The entire boarding operation took under 3 minutes. Their ruthlessness surprised even Donald. The children performed their tasks with a clinical efficiency that belied their youth. They showed no hesitation during the violence, no distress at restraining struggling adults. Their royal training had included crisis response scenarios, but the practical application revealed a hardness he hadn't anticipated. They understood what needed doing and did it without debate. The Shadow Star became theirs through sheer audacity and preparation. Its previous crew sat locked away while unfamiliar hands guided its systems. The ship represented both their escape vehicle and their first tangible victory against the forces hunting them. Its aging systems and criminal history suddenly became advantages. Nobody would expect royalty to escape on such a vessel. Station Control's voice crackled across the comms as the Shadow Star's engines flared to life. The demand for identification carried the sharp tone of bureaucratic suspicion meeting unauthorized activity. The ship's transponder spat back conflicting codes. Flora had patched together identification protocols from half a dozen deprecated systems, creating a digital ghost that confused the tracking computers. The system flags multiplied, each alert layering over the last until station security couldn't determine whether they were looking at a military craft, a civilian hauler, or a glitch in their own networks. Patrol ships disengaged from their docking clamps, thrusters flaring as they scrambled to intercept. Their movements were precise, coordinated, following standard interception patterns designed to herd unauthorized vessels into capture positions. Weapon systems charged with the low hum of activated energy projectors. Targeting locks blinked across the Shadow Star's navigation displays, painting lines of potential destruction across the star field ahead. Flora's hands moved across the engineering console, bypassing safety protocols with quick code injections. Emergency thrust engaged, shoving everyone back into their seats as the ship accelerated faster than its design specifications allowed. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. Structural integrity alarms, heat buildup warnings, propulsion system overload alerts. She silenced them with practiced efficiency, her focus entirely on maximizing their escape velocity. The children managed secondary systems with a competence that belied their age. Carrara monitored navigation feeds, calling out intercept courses and evasion options. Jake handled defensive system readiness, his fingers flying across the tactical display. Sam tracked the pursuing ship's energy signatures, calculating their weapon recharge cycles. Emma maintained internal systems, her voice calm as she reported status updates. They functioned as an integrated team, their royal training adapting seamlessly to starship operations. Donald piloted with a mercenary's instinct for survival. His hands guided the ship through evasive maneuvers that stressed the aging hull, using cargo containers and docking structures as cover. He flew like someone who understood both pursuit protocols and how to break them. When patrol ships attempted to box them in, he dropped precipitously toward the station's surface, using the complex topography to break targeting locks. Bounty hunter ships activated from nearby private docking ports. These vessels were modified for pursuit. Enhanced engines, advanced sensors, non-regulation weapon systems. Their pilots operated outside standard military protocols, employing aggressive tactics that station security wouldn't risk. They moved in unpredictable patterns, attempting to flank and herd the Shadow Star toward waiting capture teams. Station defense systems tracked the escaping ship but hesitated to fire. Regulations prohibited destructive force against civilian vessels within the safety perimeter, and the transponder confusion created just enough doubt to stay their triggers. The defensive grid operators faced a cascade of conflicting data. Was this a hijacked civilian ship or a military craft with clearance issues? The hesitation bought precious seconds. The Kepler system offered potential sanctuary, a sparse collection of mining outposts and uncharted planetoids where corporate control weakened. Its navigational hazards included asteroid fields, gravitational anomalies, and unstable pulsar emissions that could hide a ship from sensors. The risks were substantial: pirates, uncharted obstacles, and limited resources. But so were the opportunities for disappearances. They achieved escape velocity as the station's gravitational influence weakened. The pursuing hunters maintained distance but didn't close the gap. Their ships were faster but less sturdy, their pilots cautious about pushing too hard in contested space. The Shadow Star shuddered under the strain of emergency thrust, its systems protesting the abuse but holding together through Flora's constant adjustments. Their success marked only the transition to greater dangers. The open space beyond Orbital 9 offered no protection, only different threats. Hunter networks would be alerting counterparts across nearby systems. Imperial patrols would be watching primary routes. The children's value made them targets wherever they went, their escape simply widening the hunting grounds rather than ending the pursuit. The Shadow Star moved into the dark between stars, carrying its precious cargo toward uncertain sanctuary. Their royal blood carried weight far beyond bounty figures. The credits offered for their capture represented only the surface value. Their true worth lay in the threat they posed to established power structures across multiple systems. Their existence challenged the current political order's legitimacy, their living presence contradicting official narratives about the transition of power. Imperial intelligence agencies wanted them eliminated. Their survival meant maintaining a focal point for resistance, a living alternative to corporate control. Royal heirs provided a banner around which dissent could coalesce, a symbol that existing power structures feared more than any weapon. Elimination represented the cleanest solution. No martyrdom, no ongoing symbol, just disappeared children forgotten over time. Rebel factions saw them differently. They wanted figureheads for their movements, legitimate royalty to lend authority to their causes. A living heir provided moral justification for resistance, turning what might be seen as criminal activity into legitimate opposition. Their presence could unite fractured rebel groups under a common banner, creating a coordinated threat where previously there had been only scattered resistance. Corporate interests viewed them as leverage. Controlling royal heirs meant influence over regional politics, bargaining chips in negotiations with imperial authorities. Their value lay in what could be extracted through their possession: contract concessions, regulatory advantages, preferential treatment in resource allocation. They represented economic power beyond simple bounty payments. Their mother's treasury compounded their value. Its contents could fund entire military campaigns or reshape local economies. The treasury's existence suggested Lydia had prepared for instability, creating resources to support her children's claim or challenge corrupt regimes. Its potential mobilization threatened the financial foundations of current power structures. The birthmarks provided irrefutable biological proof. No document could be forged. No witness coerced to create such evidence. The patterns on their skin contained encrypted genetic data that confirmed their lineage beyond any dispute. This biological certainty made them both invaluable and dangerous. Their claim couldn't be undermined through conventional means. They represented danger because their survival threatened stability. The current order had built its foundation on Lydia's removal, constructing narratives about necessary transitions and improved governance. Living heirs contradicted those stories, their very existence suggesting the current regime lacked legitimate authority. Their presence could inspire movements that might destabilize multiple systems. They represented opportunity because their survival offered alternatives. For those dissatisfied with corporate control, they provided hope for different governance models. For those seeking justice for Lydia's removal, they offered potential reckoning. Their value lay in what they symbolized as much as what they physically were. Their potential impact extended across political, economic, and social dimensions. Political landscapes could shift based on their survival or capture. Economic arrangements might be renegotiated with their involvement. Social structures could be challenged through their legitimate authority. They carried the weight of history in their bloodlines. The galaxy watched their escape with divided interest. Some hoped for their capture, others for their continued survival. Their value made them prizes in a complex game of power and influence, where different factions sought to use them for conflicting purposes. Their childhood had become irrelevant against the political significance they carried. Their survival could trigger chain reactions across multiple systems. Alliances might reform around their presence. Economic agreements could be renegotiated based on their potential influence. Military strategies would adapt to account for their symbolic power. 4 children had become catalysts for potential galactic change. The pursuit would intensify because their value increased with each successful evasion. Every system they crossed, every hunter they escaped, every day they survived added to their legend and their threat. Their journey had become more than personal survival. It had become a political statement written in action rather than words. Their bloodline carried the memory of different governance, of power exercised with responsibility rather than exploitation. This memory threatened those who benefited from current arrangements. Their value lay in reminding people that alternatives existed, that power could serve rather than control, that leadership could mean protection rather than predation. The children themselves understood only fragments of this significance. They knew they were hunted, knew their mother had been killed, knew they carried something important. The full weight of their political value remained abstract compared to the immediate reality of survival. But across the galaxy, others understood exactly what their existence meant, and that understanding made them both priceless and doomed. The cramped interior of the Shadow Star became a crucible, where roles dissolved under shared necessity. The recycled air smelled of stale lubricant and human sweat, the constant hum of strained engines their only soundtrack. Survival required more than temporary alliance, it demanded integration. Former identities of mercenary, mechanic, and royalty blurred into functional unity. Donald's shift from reluctant protector to committed ally showed in small gestures. He began consulting Karara on tactical decisions, his mercenary experience blending with her strategic education. When distributing rations, he ensured the children received equal shares rather than treating them as dependents. His watch rotations included them as active participants, assigning monitoring duties based on capability rather than age. The weapon he cleaned at the engineering station remained close, but his posture relaxed into something resembling partnership. Flora's technical skills became their lifeline. She constantly monitored the ship's failing systems, her hands moving across repair patches and temporary fixes. The children assisted her, their royal education including engineering principles that now found practical application. They learned to identify failing components by sound, to prioritize repairs based on survival necessity, to improvise solutions from limited resources. The mechanics' knowledge merged with royal theoretical training, creating a hybrid competence that kept the aging vessel functional. The children embraced capabilities beyond ceremonial functions. Jake took responsibility for internal security, his palace guard training adapting to shipboard defense. Sam monitored communications and sensor feeds, his analytical skills parsing complex data streams for threat patterns. Emma managed resource allocation with diplomatic precision, ensuring tensions didn't escalate in the confined space. Karara coordinated their efforts with a commander's assurance, her decisions carrying weight that belied her youth. Their calculated ruthlessness surprised both adults. When discussing potential encounters with pursuit vessels, the children analyzed options with cold pragmatism. They debated tactical advantages of disabling versus destroying threats, assessed collateral damage probabilities, and considered psychological impacts of aggressive responses. Their royal education had included crisis leadership scenarios that assumed necessary violence, and they applied these lessons without sentimental hesitation. The pursuit confirmed their significance. Hunter ships maintained distance but constant surveillance, their patterns indicating coordinated tracking across multiple systems. Communications intercepts revealed bounty increases and expanded authorization for capture methods. Imperial patrols repositioned along potential routes, their movements suggesting high-priority interest. The reaction confirmed the children represented more than financial prizes. They threatened fundamental power structures. They evolved from refugees to active participants in their own survival. Decision-making became collaborative, with each person contributing specialized knowledge. The children's insights into political motivations and faction behaviors complemented Donald's tactical experience and Flora's technical expertise. Their value shifted from passive royalty to active partners whose knowledge and skills increased their chances of survival. The transformation affected all of them fundamentally. Donald rediscovered purpose beyond credit payments, his protective instincts aligning with something resembling principle. Flora found her technical skills serving justice rather than mere survival, her actions feeling like redemption for past compromises. The children shed the last remnants of sheltered upbringing, their royal education becoming practical wisdom forged in actual crisis. Their journey reshaped them collectively. The shared danger created bonds that transcended initial motivations. Conversations shifted from immediate survival to broader implications, from escape routes to potential outcomes. They began functioning as a single unit with integrated capabilities, each person's strength compensating for others' limitations. The transformation reached beyond practical cooperation into something resembling found family, forged in the relentless pressure of pursuit. The Shadow Star carried more than fleeing passengers. It held a microcosm of what their survival might represent. Different factions working toward common purpose, diverse skills merging into effective action, shared danger overcoming individual interest. The ship moved through contested space as a tiny bubble of transformed relationships, its occupants changed by necessity into something none of them could have anticipated. News of their escape rippled across communication networks like a shockwave through still water. Bounty postings updated automatically, the credit values climbing with each confirmed sighting. The numbers now represented more than reward money. They measured the escalating concern of those who wanted them captured. Each digit added to the total signaled growing desperation among their pursuers. Multiple factions recalculated their positions. Imperial intelligence diverted resources from border monitoring to recapture operations. Surveillance satellites repositioned, agent networks activated, interrogation priorities shifted. The children's successful evasion demonstrated vulnerability in systems that were supposed to be impregnable. This required recalibration of entire security paradigms. Rebel groups saw different opportunities. Legitimate heirs provided moral authority to resistance movements. Their survival offered a focal point for unifying disparate factions. Communications intercepts showed renewed coordination among cells that had previously operated independently. The children's escape became a rallying point, their journey symbolizing possibility where there had been only defiance. Corporate entities ran new risk assessments. Political instability affected markets, changed regulatory environments, altered profit projections. The children's survival introduced variables into carefully calculated equations. Emergency board meetings reviewed contingency plans, security contracts were amended, liability protections were strengthened. The corporate world prepared for potential shifts in power dynamics. Hunter networks shared new tracking methodologies. They circulated updated biological signature patterns, distributed sensor calibration settings for royal marks, traded information about the Kepler system's peculiarities. Bounty hunting protocols were updated to account for the target's demonstrated capabilities. The children had graduated from high-value fugitives to strategic challenges requiring specialized approaches. The Kepler system became the focus of intensified military presence. Patrol ships increased patrol densities along shipping lanes. Customs inspections became more rigorous at checkpoints. Surveillance platforms were deployed to monitor anomalous regions where a ship might hide. The previously neglected system suddenly mattered because it might contain what everyone sought. Their escape demonstrated flaws in control systems designed to be seamless. The fact that 4 children could evade coordinated pursuit revealed vulnerabilities in surveillance networks, weaknesses in response protocols, gaps in interagency coordination. Security directors reviewed procedures that had failed, analyzed breakdowns in communication, identified points where the system should have captured them but didn't. 4 children became catalysts for changes they couldn't possibly understand. Their flight triggered reassessments of power, recalculations of risk, realignments of interest across multiple sectors. They were being hunted not just for who they were, but for what their survival represented. The possibility that established systems could be challenged, that control could be evaded, that alternatives might exist. The reaction extended beyond immediate pursuit. Political analysts revised forecasts, economic models incorporated new variables, military strategists updated contingency plans. The children's journey had become a destabilizing event, their survival challenging assumptions about control and power. They moved through space unaware of the disruptions trailing in their wake. Their value kept increasing because their survival kept mattering more. Each day they remained free amplified their significance, compounded their threat, strengthened their symbol. The bounty numbers climbed, the patrols intensified, the surveillance tightened, but the children continued moving through the darkness between stars, their small ship carrying consequences far beyond its size. The plea echoes beyond that rust-stained corridor. Their value isn't measured in credits or bounties, but in something deeper. The way simple human connection can rewrite destinies. A mercenary remembers his purpose. A mechanic reclaims her honor. Royal children become survivors. Choices made in desperation ripple outward, challenging empires and shifting allegiances across the stars. Some decisions don't just change lives, they alter the course of galaxies. And it all began with 4 words in the dark. Don't leave us, human.